Hey everybody, good evening. It's your favorite Warlock Jay here. I really need to start doing these videos earlier. Anywho, today is day 4 of the 30-day RPG challenge, and today is favorite game world. Favorite game world. That's big because I'm not sure if they mean setting or like actual world game the game takes place in. I guess that's the same thing, but I have to say, I don't really have a set one, so I'm just gonna name a couple of them. Forgotten Realms is a very fun swords and sorcery inspired setting. I don't like that they made it the de facto setting in 5th edition because it's I should put this. I don't want the realms crammed down my throat, if that makes any sense. What else? I do love Dragonlance because I'm a huge fan of like epic fantasy. That's always been my thing. Dark Sun because post-apocalyptic fantasy is fun. What else? If someone's running the D20 rules, Shadowrun has always been a fun. Whenever I played D20 Shadowrun one time, and it was the most fun I've ever had playing Shadowrun, outside of actually playing Shadowrun. Lodos, Record of Lodoss War. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Record of Lodoss War was an anime that was released back in the early 90s. And the main premise of it was a group of Japanese science fiction and fantasy writers got together to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons. And they did what was called a replay. So they would record the session via voice recorder. And they would turn that into like a story that you'd read. And those were really popular in Japan for a very long time. So Lodos is kind of like a setting where the gods have just finished this big giant battle, and they are and a lot of people, a lot of the world is just basically recovering from that fact. So because they were playing, I believe, like basic D&D, the party lineup was basically fighter, magic user, thief, cleric, dwarf, and elf. I do not remember if there was an actual halfling in there because halfling was I believe is under D&D copyright, and they weren't allowed to use Hobbit because the Tolkien Society would be so far up their ass as soon as they mentioned the word Hobbit. Like a little brief of D&D aside history, halflings were originally called hobbits, but then the Tolkien Society got on TSR's case. It's like, listen, we will shut your company down if you use so much as utter the word hobbit, amongst other things like Treant, Balrogs, things like that. So, Record of Lodoss War, if you haven't seen it, it's a pretty good anime. I highly recommend it. What else? I guess Birthright was also a pretty fun campaign. Birthright, for those of you who don't know, was a old was one of the first settings made for Dungeons and Dragons. It was more for it was more intrigue based. Think a much less violent Game of Thrones, where you were basically like the heir of a kingdom, and you were basically running the kingdom. Think of it like Kingmaker for Pathfinder. I think that's pretty much it. Although there is a one honorable mention. And please forgive me. There was a this was the title when they wrote this title. It came out in a far previous time, and they never re-released it again. But they did a setting in Dungeons and Dragons called Oriental Adventures, and that was for Asian-inspired campaigns. So basically, you can have like elf samurai, dwarf ninjas, any sort of weird combination you could have with typical D&D races. You could have with like Asian-inspired classes. So they had the samurai, which is kind of like your knight. Ronin, which is kind of like your basic fighter. Wujin, which was like your wizard. Ninja, rogue. The Shuhenja, which would be a cleric. And then your Sohi, which would be your paladin. There were probably more, but that's all I can remember. And it had like a honor system. So once your character went below a certain threshold of honor, basically the DM had to take your character sheet and then just rip it up bit by bit by bit by bit until that character is essentially like unusable and gone. So those would be my favorite game worlds. Tomorrow I'm gonna be doing day 5, and good evening and good gaming, everybody. I'll try to make the video earlier as possible.